Councilor John Howells, but again, Councilor Thomas made the request that we do something early. And so the first one is Interstate 14. Interstate 14 is under construction in Texas and first officially opened on January 26, 2017 near Killeen, Texas. And based on what we've heard around this table and from one of our young millennials, Frank Lumpkin, the fourth, we desire that our local legislative delegation support an extension of I-14 to and through Columbus and include specific funding in the state budget for this DOT project and take any other appropriate legislative action concerning this highway extension. And so we've got a resolution that we would ask that you approve that we could forward to the delegation, that hopefully they can send it in early, and hopefully there would be some consideration for pushing this to the federal level or supporting it in any way we can from a state standpoint.
Okay. Councilor House?
The reason I asked that this be included in the budget side is because we've all said we think we ought to do it. The House and the Senate at the state have endorsed the idea, but nobody's put any money on it. So until somebody puts some money on it, it's just going to lie there virtually dead. And so my thought was, well, let's put it up there and ask them to throw some money on it for some piece of it. I mean, if the state commits money to it in some manner, then that gives it a chance to move forward. Otherwise, it's just going to be a dream that will never be fulfilled.
Very good. Thank you. Councilor Davis?
Mr. City Manager, when will you start taking requests for legislative action to put on that list? Any time from here on out?
Yeah, we have been soliciting and we're accepting them now. And in fact, the Hometown Connection is scheduled for October 24th, I believe. October 24th. We've already confirmed that date with the delegation and need to confirm your schedules, of course. But we're accepting those now. We'll still have our usual Hometown Connection in October, but we want to get these up early because they potentially funding to be determined on I-14. And on the second one, I'll talk about that, but we're doing that now.
Well, for referral's sake, if you don't mind, I'm going to just share with you one that I've been requested to put on the list. And the city attorney's office can probably craft a language, and the staff can get together and craft a language. But Mr. City Manager, Mr. Mayor, fellow council colleagues, I've been getting a lot of concerns about Lake Oliver. The excessive amount of silt, dirt that's built up, silt that's built up, runoff that's built up, and it seems to be becoming more and more noticeable throughout Lake Oliver. There's a lot of that are natural causes, but in the topic of the discussion, I think there's going to be some Georgia Power folks and some others who are going to have some meetings with some of the people who have expressed concerns around living on Lake Oliver or use Lake Oliver for recreation. But I don't think that the state does any kind of studies, 10-year, 20-year, 25, 30, and the question came up, if this continues, where are we going to be at in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years? So I have talked to some of our legislators, and they've said that they don't know of anything that's out there, of nobody doing studies, impact studies, from this standpoint. But that has come up, and I told them that one of the things that the city can do is to ask our legislators to look into that. I don't know if that's, I imagine it's a statewide issue, but I do know that we're having some problems that are becoming more and more noticeable, and I don't know of one, whether with the Corps of Engineers, federal government, the state, I don't know Georgia Power. Everybody has different responsibilities on it, but I don't know of any impact study out there that we're monitoring that and looking at it over the course of time, which begs the question, where are we going to be in 10, 20, 30 years? What are we going to be dealing with? Is it continuing to build up, or is it going to be something that, is going to impact Columbus tremendously? I don't know, but it just came to my attention that, maybe we should ask our legislators to look into that.
Okay.
and craft some language where it can be proposed, because I would think that would be, it'd be a wise effort. So I just,
Well,
if I may, whether referral or just put it out there to be put on the list, if you want to send a copy of the draft to the council members, myself, that would be great.
Sure. We'll see if we can get something drafted and let you take a look at it.
Thank you, sir.
Good. Mr. Mayor, it's a resolution to go to the delegation, so
We
if
can
council
entertain a
agree.
motion to approve the resolution.
Two resolutions.
Yeah, you typically vote on them individually, though, so, separately.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. I believe it was,
I made it, John said.
okay.
Or John. Either way.
All right. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
And the second one, Mr. Mayor, the National Infantry Museum, as you know, is looking to develop the approximately 59 acres of land it owns just north of its main campus. To do this, a two-lane span road is proposed that would run through the middle of the property and allow the development of this site. Without the roadway, they are telling us the property could remain vacant for some time, limiting the generation of any revenue that could be used for the maintenance and development of the museum. The estimated cost of this project has been established at $2.7 million. And so we are asking you to support a resolution for the extension of Legacy Way that would connect with the proposed new infantry road that's currently under design and proposed for construction in 2021. And so,
Move approval.
Okay.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion, Councilor Thomas?
This is an issue that I know the Infantry Museum has been talking about for some time. And in a conversation that I had with General Jones and Mr. Redmond about this, they were talking about the prospect of, if this road goes up through that property, that they might not sell that property to businesses, but could do long-term leases, and that those long-term leases would in turn bring property taxes into the city. And so this is not only for the museum's maintenance and operation, but also to help with property taxes in the city. And so I would, and I do know, and Mr. Mayor, I think you probably were there last week when the governor was in town, and he met with the Infantry Museum, with some of the folks from the Infantry Museum. So this is something I think that is very timely and that we need to get moving on as quickly as we can. So I appreciate your support of this resolution.
Thank you. Councilor Davis?
Yeah, I just, I've had some conversations.
Well, Bruce is a little quick on me over there.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had some conversations with some of the leadership out there, and I think the way it was stated to me, well, first of all, I'm not sure I'm understanding what we're being asked to do. If we're being asked to fund that road today, that's a whole different subject. But I was told that they have already been given verbal permission by the director of the DOT and maybe one of our representatives, but there doesn't seem to be anything on file right now.
This is a resolution going to the legislative delegation to ask the
ask for-
state to fund it.
Well, that would be,
On that GOD project.
Yeah, because see, right now, it's not even
Okay.
funded.
well, I don't have a problem with that. I think that was the direction to go. We're going to ask are we asking our commissioner or the DOT representative to fund it?
Whoever,
It's the state,
whoever
the
has
legislative,
money.
yeah, legislative delegation,
Okay.
we'll hand it off to them.
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that.
Okay,
think
I didn't
that-
think you did, I was wondering where we were going.
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Maybe I just, forgive me, maybe I just misunderstood the funding
Nah, we're
aspect of it.
Okay.
I don't know, never mind.
Motion and a second. I keep turning the wrong lights off. Motion and a second. Any more discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed?
So thank you, Mr. Mayor, on that, and council, but we will be having our hometown connection, and we are accepting right now any legislative agenda items for 2020, and they can include funding. If you failed or didn't get them in now, we'll still accept them at the hometown, for the hometown connection. So we look forward to hearing from you and from departments on legislative matters.
We will be bringing a resolution asking council to support allowing us to support Representative Richard Smith's previous attempt to allow any SPLOST funds to require a minimum of 2%, no more than 5%, set aside for maintenance for any projects completed through a SPLOST.
Yeah. Okay. So,
Councilor Thomas.
And Mr. Mayor and Mr. City Manager, I would request that the two of you have some deliberate conversations with our delegation to let them know why we have done this earlier than we typically do, that we do want them in their dealing with the governor and with other legislators before we get to the October date, to bear these things in mind. And let's make sure that it's a deliberate attempt to make sure they know what we're requesting the governor to include in his budget.
sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, Mr. Mayor, we're going to call on Carolina Rodriguez to talk to us about the Land Bank Authority. She's our real estate coordinator for community reinvestment. She works for Lloyd Johnson.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, members of council, Mr. City Manager, esteemed city staff, and members of the public. My name is Carolina Rodriguez, and I'm a real estate specialist for Community Reinvestment Department, and I oversee the Land Bank Authority. So I'd like to just spend a few moments kind of recapping where you've been with the land bank, what we're currently up to, and what we're tracking, for happening in the next year. Okay, so the Columbus Land Bank Authority was established in 1992. It was one of the first land banks in the country. In 2012, the state of Georgia passed a new Land Bank Act that gave increased flexibility to land banks here in Georgia. It passed with near unanimous support, and since 2012, here in Columbus, about 9 properties have been conveyed under that law. In the last year, you all contracted with the Center for Community Progress, and they made some recommendations as far as how to proceed with the land bank, and one of those was hiring some staff, and that would be me for the land bank, and I've been working to implement a lot of the recommendations that they provided. The land bank is basically designed to go after problem properties in the community, properties that are vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent. And the land bank is also designed to really deal with a lot of the negative externalities of those problem properties, things like neighborhood decline, crime, and the hit that, of course, municipal finances take as a result. So it's not just about the property, but it's about getting towards those positive outcomes that deal with those bigger problems of the cycle of abandonment and neighborhood stabilization. So in designing a way forward for the land bank, we kind of asked ourselves, well, how might people engage with the land bank? It was an underutilized tool, and so folks were kind of unsure about what exactly it is that we do and how to engage with us. And we also asked, well, how might we dust this tool off? What is the best way? As you know, our land bank is governed by a board of 7 members that you appoint. We focused a lot on kind of ensuring that we had a good framework moving forward. So just making sure that we all were on the same page about the land bank and its powers and authorities, making sure that we had policies and procedures in place so that we could be a more predictable tool in the community, that folks knew exactly what our priorities are and how to engage with us. We rebranded and launched a new website. We were able to work with Chattahoochee Valley Community College and their visual communications class. The former professor there, Chuck Lawson, was very helpful. And our board ended up selecting a logo designed by one of the students, Corey Hart. So we were very thankful for that collaboration. And then we've been working with Clerk of Council to make sure that we are not just in compliance with open meetings, but, kind of exceeding those expectations of transparency and, again, trying to be open and predictable for folks. And then just scrubbing through our bank accounts and making sure that everyone understood that, we kind of our land bank funds were dwindling, and we did receive a injection of community development block grant funds, so that understanding our funding source and what the priorities are for that funding and the constraints and opportunities for that funding was important. Developing the partnerships was also key in this last year of activity. So making sure we were, on the same page with community reinvestment and the city's consolidated plan, working with John Hutchinson and his team at Code Enforcement and figuring out where there were synergies that could take place. Building our relationship with the tax commissioner was very important. We reached out to the school district to get an agreement, again, on some efficiencies that we could gain there. And then, of course, our affordable housing developer partners with NeighborWorks and Habitat, and exploring others around the community. Then we set up to develop some programs, and I'll talk a little bit more about those in detail. And just a reminder about the powers of the land bank. We're able to acquire property by sale, donation, or government transfer. We're able to place credit bids at the tax sales, absent third-party bidders. The land bank is able to hold property tax exempt. And an important feature of the land bank is the ability to extinguish back taxes and liens. We're also able to consider things beyond the sale price of a property when we're disposing of properties, for example, the type of community benefit that can be provided through the transfer. And the land bank is able to retain 75% of municipal taxes generated for 5 years after the transfer of a property through the land bank. Some of the tools that we are keen on using is the judicial tax sale process over the non-judicial tax sale tool, mainly because it's a shorter time period and it results in better due process for the property owners and gets us clear and marketable title to the property at the end of that process. Another thing we're doing is we're working with applicants to help share some of the risk. So a lot of times we're asking for a good chunk of the payment up front, and I'll talk about that more. Our board members were interested in having a very user-friendly application process for people, and so that's something that, again, we've designed and tweaked, as we go, as we move forward and receive input from the community. And again, our main source of funding is through community development block grant funds, so making sure that we are in compliance with that, and then again, just leveraging the potential of those funds in the community. And outreach. Outreach has been very critical in terms of getting the word out to the community. We've had a lot of organizations interested in the land bank, and so I try to make myself available to go and speak and talk about this incredible tool. this is a little bit about the characteristics of the type of person or entity we're looking to partner with. We want to make sure that our applicants represent a broad, variety in the community, so nonprofit, for-profit organizations, civic groups, churches, local growers, builders, developers, and individuals. A lot of land banks are able to kind of partner with what we would consider good neighbors. Those are folks who are teachers, firemen, police officers in the community, and we really know and value the kind of stabilizing effect that they can have on the community. So we're always looking forward to partnering with folks like that. We want to make sure they're in good standing with the community, and we want to make sure that they're ready for action in terms of financially able, but also have the willingness and the motivation. So I kind of explained that the land bank is really not the best kind of tool for what we would call a do-nothing investor, right? The kind of investor who might just want a property for their balance sheets, but are actually wanting to do anything with it. Okay, so in terms of our housing program, of course, we all know very well the work of NeighborWorks and Habitat for Humanity in the community, so we're currently partnering with them to take some vacant, abandoned, and tax delinquent properties through the judicial tax sale process. So the property might be in a dilapidated state, and then through the good work that NeighborWorks and Habitat and similar organizations do, then we end up with a home that is in good condition for folks to live in. And I also put a picture there of Carrie Strickland from Truth Spring. This is an organization in the North Highlands community that functions as a community development corporation. And in a lot of cities, the community development corporations are really powerful catalysts for neighborhood change, and they're driven by your folks in the neighborhood, boots on the ground. And a lot of times through their work early on in the neighborhood, they're able to attract interest from big organizations and just bring stability and revitalization to the neighborhood. So we do have again, properties that we're bringing through the acquisition process that are going to go to affordable housing developers in the community. And we also have 4 properties that are for sale currently, and you can go to our website to get information on those. We have interest in 3 of them, and so we're hoping in the next few weeks to drum up some more interest in those properties and get them back into good use. The other kind of program that we're running is called a side lot program. This is a picture of a gentleman in another community, but I'm hoping by the end of the year to replace that with one of our local property owners and side lot transferees, which we have 4 in our judicial tax sale process right now. But it's basically, a property owner that may live next to a vacant, abandoned lot, tax delinquent lot. And they call me and they say, hey, I live next to this property, how do I go about acquiring it? And we say, well, you sound like the kind of partner that the land bank wants to work with. And what we would do is we would get the property through that judicial tax sale process, extinguish the back taxes and the liens owed on the property, and we transfer it to the adjacent property owner. And we ask that they get it resurveyed, replatted, and combine it with their property. Another opportunity that we have with the land bank is what we're calling our LB2B, or Land Bank to Business program. And this would be good for a business that's maybe in the acceleration or expansion stage of growth, where they were, looking at a particular maybe property that could be used for commercial activity or cottage industry. And again, we could work with them. We haven't had an example of this yet, but I am looking for one. So if you know anyone, please send them our way. Okay, and our last program is about community space and high-quality green space. So this just recognizes that greening and cleaning abandoned lots isn't just a consolation prize, right? But it's actually can deliver some really awesome results for the neighborhood. And so we're really looking to partner with neighborhood groups, with folks who can have eyes on the lot and give it some TLC. We're also looking to partner with local growers to turn those either into community gardens or into actual urban farms. And we do have a property at 2608 16th Avenue that we recently acquired, and we're in the process of transferring that to some local farmers, and they're going to be doing a micro farm. And we're really excited about this partnership because they're going to be selling a lot of their produce at markets where people can use their SNAP benefits, maybe even double their SNAP benefits. If anyone's been out to the Mercy Med Farm, that would be an example of a market that does that. And the land bank has owned a lot at 2235 Cornell Avenue that's been probably an example of what we would call a low-quality green space in that it's only been mowed. And we're really looking for partners out there to help us take this space to another level. And I think I've approached Ashbury Methodist Church, so I'm excited to hear back from them. But if there are other partners in that neighborhood that are interested, then I would ask that they please contact me so we can explore some possibilities there. And another important component that goes, again, beyond properties where the land bank can be instrumental is in capacity building. Again, where we have, strong neighborhood associations that maybe are ready to take it to a new level and become community development corporations. We are able to offer training and bring in expertise that can help develop these kinds of neighborhood assets. We'll be taking a contingent of key partners to the Reclaiming Vacant Properties Conference in Atlanta in October, and we can't wait to bring back all of the wonderful knowledge to see what we can implement here in Columbus. One of the problems that we've come across, I guess in terms of a root cause of blighted and abandoned properties, is title issues, right? Tangled title, heirs property. And so one way that the land bank can return properties to good use is by helping to resource families in untangling their title and fixing these title problems. And that way we're helping the families keep their properties and preventing forced sales. So to do that, our land bank is going to be organizing 2 workshops for prevention of heirs property. And our focus areas right now are going to be the South Winton Road Lawyers Lane neighborhood, mainly because of the presence of high numbers of African American property owners, and we know the heirs property tends to be more prevalent in our African American communities. And we also are going to focus on North Highlands Mill District neighborhood because of the development pressure and also because of its historical legacy as a company town. So we feel like those 2 neighborhoods are good places to start with our heirs property prevention workshops. So I'll be looking for some help to get the word out about those in the fall. And if, for those of you who like graphs and numbers, I threw in just some data in terms of where do our properties come from in the past, this past year, as well as looking into the future. So in the past, our properties have mostly come from city transfer and the regular tax sale, and going forward, again, we're keen on, again, maybe getting some more partnerships from the city and also looking at that judicial tax sale as an important tool. How do we fund our acquisitions? So in the past, our land bank was working with a pretty slim budget which is just about exhausted at this point, and we, in the future, will be working more with our community development block grant funds. Who are our properties transferred to? In the past, they've been transferred to developers, and developers including for-profit entities, nonprofits, and our affordable housing developers. And going forward, we'll definitely keep that mix of developer transfers, also to community-based organizations, individuals, and we expect some properties to come into the land bank with a depository agreement with NeighborWorks, so that we are able to hold those properties tax exempt while they focus resources on some of their targeted redevelopment areas. We'll hold the properties for a couple of years in the land bank, and then we'll transfer it back to them for development. Okay, how are our properties used? In the past and going forward, we expect a lot of the properties to be rehabbed or redeveloped for housing. Again, looking for some more, to do more side lot transfers in the next year, and high-quality green space applications. Okay, so just recapping the year ahead, again, we're looking at the judicial interim tax foreclosure tool as our main process for property acquisition. We feel that 30 properties a year with our current staff and board capacity is reasonable. My position expires next summer, so just put that on the radar as well, as far as capacity for the land bank. And we're hoping to get some synergies with city-owned real estate as far as, how do we utilize the land bank to get some of our vacant, abandoned city-owned real estate back into good use for the community and generate some flexible revenues for the land bank. And just as a public service announcement, usually when I do neighborhood presentations, I like to remind folks to work with us to prevent property abandonment and loss. Reach out to the tax commissioner early if you're experiencing any kind of life challenges that you think might lead to getting behind on your tax payments. Also, of course, to our team at inspections and code enforcement. Again, they're all, kind and reasonable people, and they'll work with you. We want to make sure that folks kind of do a little, homework within their own documents and make sure that they do indeed own their property. A lot of folks think that just because you pay taxes on a property that guarantees you ownership. So we just want to put that onto folks' radar and have them double check with their attorneys and things like that, or get access to legal aid if they need it. We want to make sure that folks are preventing the continuation of tangled title and heirs property by developing and recording a will. Even if you are the new generation or recipient of heirs property, it still is important to break the cycle by getting that will done. And if you can't sell your property, don't abandonment, particularly for properties in good condition. The land bank could be a tool. I've been approached by some folks who are, maybe they're moving to another state, they're getting older, they're going to go live with their kids, and they, start off kind of, barely taking care of the property that they're leaving behind here in Columbus, but if we can find a way to be a little more proactive, then I think that will also help us out. And again, if you're very active in your neighborhood, consider organizing a community development corporation. And if you want extra reading, there's some resources for you there. And before I close, I'll just say thank you very much for all of the support and the goodwill towards the land bank and towards the work that we're trying to do. So subject to your questions, I'll conclude.
Councilor Barnes.
I've had the pleasure of speaking with you over the phone, and as you know, I'm really high on community reinvestment. I think City Manager, you know that with that good director that you see sitting there, and this is the young lady that, Laura, you had me call. The community space program is something that a lot of areas in the community are interested in. Would be called on you maybe to give some presentation to some of the neighborhood organizations that are interested in this here?
Absolutely. All people have to do is just give me a call, and we'll work out a time when I can come out and do that.
Because it is really growing interest in this community space program. And so I got your number, and I'll be giving you a call. Thank you so much for being on board.
Thank you.
And I noticed that little Dinky said about 2020, right? We need to try to make sure that we keep someone like you on. So Laura, you just...
Well, I can tell you Carolina is making a positive impact throughout the government, so there will be a collection after this sermon. We'll make sure we keep her around. No, all kidding aside, she's done an amazing job. Land Bank Authority, I think, is going to be one of the more utilized, more critical tools for us to continue to grow our community. And it's going to allow us to be intentional and gives us a little flexibility that government doesn't typically enjoy. So under your leadership, we look forward to seeing what prosperity comes from that organization. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. And the final update, Mayor and Council, I've got Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge is going to talk about the Government Center options update.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. This is a continuing update on the Government Center options as we move forward with trying to determine which options to further study for pricing as we move forward. Again, just to remind you, the 4 options that have been considered and been discussed in the past. Option 1 on the existing site would be a demolition of the wings and the garage, providing for a new judicial center on the existing site, and the renovation of the tower for administrative purposes, as well as a new parking garage. Option 2 is the complete demolition of the tower, wings, and the garage to provide for a new judicial center and administration building, as well as a parking garage, and this is on the existing site at 110th Street. Option 3 is a combination. It's a complete demolition of those facilities on the existing site, providing for a new judicial center on the existing site with a parking garage, and moving the administration building to a new site with parking at that new site for administration. And option 4 would be a new site for both the judicial center and the administration center, providing for a parking facility on that new site to be determined. At the work session, there was a recommendation made that we move forward with evaluation of 2 options as we're trying to narrow those options, which would be option 2 and option 4. This would be buildings on the same site as opposed to option 4, which is new buildings on a new site. And this provides for some pros and cons to both of those options as the discussion continues. We did get some additional comments as we heard at the work session last week, which I've provided those comments that we heard from council. To remove the demolition option was one of the comments, and to allow for the resale of that government center. Remove option 2 and 3 and keep 1 and 4 was one of the comments that we heard at the work session. Consider multiple buildings. Consider the operational costs of multiple smaller buildings versus 2 large buildings. Locate the judicial center close to the jail was one of the items that was discussed. Prepare a master plan for the new site. Gather additional input from citizens as well as employees. Establish a method of ongoing communication with citizens, and consider repurposing the government center. These were the comments that we heard from the work session, just to continue to document that discussion as we move forward. Other comments that we've received from the legal community include leaving the courthouse on the existing site was one of the things that we heard from the legal community, and that it has close proximity to the existing law office, and the negative uptown economic impact was one of the comments made. Remain on this historic site, determine the highest and best use of the existing site, revitalization and economic impact on a new site, as well as the renovation of the existing tower was one of the things that we heard comments from some of the legal community. I did receive another response late yesterday. Those comments have not been added to this running list, but I will provide those at the next update on the options. So as next steps, as we move forward, and I'll turn it over to the city manager.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager. I told her when she gets to this point, she might want to step back from the podium as I start talking about. But let me just say, Mayor and Council, we are trying to get down to
Excuse me, would you ask him to put that last slide back up? I'm sorry. Leave that one.
Yeah, we're trying to get down to narrow things down from 4 options, obviously, to 2 options. And I made a comment at one of the previous meetings that I'll probably make some recommendation, and then I'll probably get beat up, and all kind of things will happen. So I noticed she moved back from the podium, too. But let me just say that I would like for you to consider approval to further study option 2 with the understanding that the mayor and council can revisit this option 2 for modifications at any time. And so this would at least move one option off the table as we've moved towards 2, and it would leave option 4 on the table that we've heard from the legal community, Historic Columbus, we've heard from lawyers. Then we start to take option 4 and start to modify and get it to a point that the option 4 would be modified and then become the second option that we look at. And so option 2 is the existing site, complete demolition of the tower, wings, and parking garage. We would construct a new judicial center on that site, a new administration building, and a new parking garage. So in other words, we would demo the 2 buildings on that site, and then we would come back with 2 buildings, a judicial center and an administration building. And if we could just get you to approve that, knowing that, not necessarily final, you can come back and say, well, after further study, we want to go back to option 2, and we think we want to have 1 building, or we want to do 1 building there and 1 building somewhere. But at least we would have something that we could maybe start to look at. And from the judges or the legal community and many others, their preference is that we stay on the existing site. So I wanted to see if you would consider approving option 2, existing site, complete demolition of the tower, wings, and parking garage, new judicial center, new administration building, new parking garage. And we make it very clear that this council can come back and start and go back to option 2 and start some modifications if you decide that, based on further study, we need to do that. And so I'm asking you to approve us placing option 2 over in the category of study, and then we will come back to you and with all of legal comments, judicial comments, your constituents' comments, your comments, and work on option 4.
All right, Counselor House?
Thank you, Mayor. I think looking at option 2 and 4 are good, because we've had comments, at least I've received comments, that heavily favor both of those.
Okay.
And I don't know whether you want to consider it as a subset of 2 or a subset of 4, but I think if we don't have some kind of estimate, if not a firm cost, to renovate the tower and keep all or part of the city administration and judicial function in the tower, we will never answer all the questions from the citizens.
I'll tell you, one of the challenges with that is, I mean, there's nothing magic about 2. The only thing magic about 2 is it holds down cost.
Right.
I mean, we can evaluate all 4 of these plus 3 more if you want to, but it's going to cost you.
Understand.
And so to do that investigation, the renovation, I think is going to require council to make an acknowledgement that, hey, we want to check on these 2, but we want to spend the money to do that too. Because the challenge here is going to be listening to the public and listening to what people are saying, but we also have to recognize that there's no way we're going to be able to get the true temperature of the entire community. I mean, if you receive 100 calls today, that's 199,900 people that didn't call you. So I agree with moving forward and trying to get as much information, but the goal right now, frankly, from the administration was to limit the number of areas that we go out there and spend the money to really vet so that we can get, because really one of the key determinants is going to be what it costs. I mean, we may like one option, and then by the time we get the cost back, we go, ooh, I don't like that anymore. So just putting it out there. We can study as many as you want, but that's a policy decision and a financial decision that this council will make.
So if we were able to get you to approve option 2, then we would spend all of our time with option 4, and all of those comments that the deputy city manager talked about that we've received would be trying to massage or modify option 4 to get what we think everybody else want, who do not want the existing site with those buildings. So we'd spend all our time going forward trying to get option 4 to where we think it should be and ready for study.
And what the city manager talked about doing, I think, is as we work through it, if somebody says, well, I want to get an estimate on redoing the existing building, then have that up against the other option and vote it, and whichever one wins, that's the one that moves on to the, kind of like a round robin kind of deal, just move on to the next round. It's the only way really to get it closer to a consensus. All right, Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. I think everybody knows there's been somewhat talking points circulated around, and, you know, there's some valid questions and valid concerns, but the one thing that we're, look, a lot of us this is not the sphere where we all operate, but when you've got to really understand this in its complexity, and you got to dig deeper into the bigger picture when you start talking about renovation, when you start talking about building new buildings. There are so many variables and so many factors that it is unable to communicate to the public, but those in the business know what's going to happen. And I like to go back to that example of just a pipe bursting in the tower and what that took and the issues that were dealt with then. But I think it's important to answer those questions out in the community, and I don't have any problem, but it is, like the mayor said, it will take money. I mean, if you really want to nail it down close, you would have to go into a design stage. You may have to go into a 40% plans and then have it sent out to be estimated by the general contractors or the actual people who are going to be giving you the cost of all this. You can budget, you can throw a budget out there, but I don't know if any of us, the old saying in our business, never go into the renovation business because you don't know what you're about to deal with, and you're going to have change orders out the yazoo, when you start dealing with that stuff. There's just so many unknown variables, and anything could happen there. And once you go down that path, I mean, we're we're eating up time. We're eating up time, so it's hard to go back, and next thing you know, you're a year still into planning, 2 years into planning, and that's not even talk about design and drawing the plans and then getting into construction. And the clock's ticking somewhat on that government center today. And the other thing is, outside of the funding sources that we're talking about, depending on what you do, could have an adverse effect on your current budget, on your current reserves. And you know, and those are things that you got to really talk about, because a lot of that stuff we're talking about, when you start talking about disruption and relocation, all the rest of that, that's not part of the funding.
Right.
That's not, you can't use that.
Right.
Spots to deal with that kind of stuff. We got to find that money somewhere else. And then you don't know at the end of the day what you're creating and the additional funds it's going to take. So, you know, my point is, even though, you know, there's good talking points out there and all this, but when you really start breaking it down and getting deep into the bigger picture of all this, you'll start understanding that it's complex. You know, even from the standpoint, I'll just go out on record and saying, you start looking at renovations and remodeling, you're talking about years. You're talking about years, and nobody, I would doubt, you may get a construction a GC that would do it on risk, but I doubt it, because they know there's too many variables, so they're just going to jack the price up so high so they can, you know, fill that gap with the unknowns. But then you're looking at even further, 3, 4, 5, 6 years down the line. So these are just examples of the complexity of what we're talking about, and we're not there, Mayor. We don't, these kind of behind the scenes talks, but, you know, getting to, I'm okay with the options, Ms. City Manager, and moving forward, but, you know, those things we really have to, we're not there yet in talking about that kind of stuff, but it does weigh, and the public needs to know about that. You know, the ones that have concerns and questions, because that's a big factor, and pushing that on to the next generation or the further generation down when we're gone, that kind of impact or debt, you know, and certainly you don't want to be right back at it 10 years doing it all over again, which could happen.
Yeah.
So those, you know, we got to think 30, 40 years, and we're not going to be here, but 30, 40 years when you hand it on, you know, they're going to look back on that decision that we make today. Was it the right thing?
So,
Thank you, sir. There's a couple more in queue, sir.
Okay.
Councilor Thomas?
It seems to me that at this point, with the information that we currently have, there are two options. Do we stay at the existing site, or do we move? The options of what we do on those sites are not there yet. For example, we have a dozen judges, Superior Court, State Court, Municipal Court, Juvenile Court. Do all of them get a separate courtroom? I don't know. How much space are we talking about in that judicial center? I don't know. How much space are we talking about in the administrative center? I don't know, because we haven't gotten to that point yet. I think that Councilor House is right on, that we have got to have a price for renovating the tower. I think that if we say to the citizens of Columbus, well, we didn't look into that, we don't know how much that would have cost, that's going to be a real kick in the gut for us to get any kind of funding for this. We've got to do those kinds of things. It may cost us some money up front to do that, but we've got to do that. We've got to have the information in order to get to this. And so I guess I'm said all of that to say that at this point, the other piece, is this new parking garage going to be on that 9th to 10th Street block, or is it going to be over on 9th Street? We don't know yet. We don't know the answers to those kinds of questions. And we've got to have at least a little more knowledge about what's going on. I've been getting those emails from the attorneys particularly, about staying in downtown Columbus and not moving. I have not been getting a lot from some of the employees who work in that building, who might be displaced or, what they need. Some of the employees that might be in the annex, are we going to move the folks that are in the annex to one of these? I don't know. We don't have that kind of information yet. So at today's decision that I can make is we're talking about either doing something on the existing site or on a new site because we don't have full information yet. And until we get some of that full information, I'm not willing to say to you, we need 3 buildings on that site or we need 2 buildings over on this new site. And I think that we did advance some money earlier in the budget year to Aaron and Clemens to do some of this, some of this study, maybe I'm not remembering that correctly, but we need to have those kinds of decisions and those kinds of bits of information before we're asked to make specific decisions.
So, Mayor, I don't know if that was all of them, but...
Now, there's a few others. Councilor Crabb?
But may I say to
Sure.
Councilor Thomas, and I think I captured what you were saying, and so maybe option 2 should be complete demolition of the tower, wing, and parking garage, new judicial center, new administration building, new parking garage, or a single building with parking garage.
Well, I think what you're asking,
Well, that would be a single new building with parking garage. And
I was going to comment on that.
And so, and then my thought was, if that would help you, take option 2, put it in a category of study. So, because we don't know whether it's 1 building or 2 buildings, but we know there's going to be a parking garage. And if that was option 2, then we put it in the category of ready to study. And then they're going to come back with all that everything that in the study. But then I hear you saying, so I'm thinking there's going to be an option 2 and then an option 4 with all of the modifications and whatnot. But then as a separate study that's going to cost a little money is renovation of the existing tower. So we just take
That's what I think.
we 2 and 4 plus do a study to renovate the existing tower. And so actually that's kind of like 3, but at least I hear what you're saying, that the citizens, your constituents, are not going to want to hear you didn't even look at it.
That's right.
And so option 2, option 4, study, renovation, the new tower. And it's just, it's just something we feel like we got to look at. And so then we take option 2 off the table, but with a modification, 1 building or with garage, 2 buildings with garage on the existing site. And that's option 2.
My recommendation would be to amend option 2 to, instead of complete demolition of tower, wings, and garage, a complete renovation of current site. We look into that, because then if we look into option 4 of building the buildings, then we will, if we want to, cross-reference these, we'll have, number 4 will give us the cost of building buildings brand new. Option 2, as I amended it, would give us the option of the renovation.
Yeah, well, and I think we're saying the same thing, perhaps. If we leave the option 2 as is, continue to study option 4, but there's going to be that third complete renovation of existing tower.
Saying the same thing.
I think we're saying the
Saying
same
the same
thing.
thing.
But I'm
No,
just not,
I'm not saying to complete, I'm not saying to any demolition of any of the towers, wings, or garages.
oh, okay.
I'm saying change it to a complete renovation of the current site.
Well, that would be option, the third one I'm talking
That
about
would-
then.
But just
Completely.
change that to option 2 instead of having the complete demolition of the tower, wings, and garages, option 2, because I don't see how that can ever work. How are we ever going to move the employees and the courts out of those buildings and demo them? Where are we going to put them?
Well,
I don't see how that can ever work.
Well, I think what would, I don't know anything about construction, but what would likely happen in my mind, I told some people I was in Nashville last week, and there's construction going on everywhere in Nashville, downtown area. And there are cranes, just these cranes everywhere, and they've demoed these big buildings, cleared it out, and now they're constructing huge buildings, and between the building and the road is probably 10, 15 feet. And before I saw that real time last week and watched them do it, I'm like, there's no way we could demo the government. But that convinced me that they're doing it all over the world.
Yes.
And so they could, let's say they demo the 2 wings, leave the judges and the courts going, of course it'll be noisy, and then construct a new building where the wings are. And when they are ready to move into, let's say, the Judicial Center where the wings are, you move them over, and then you bring the tower down, and then you clear the site and construct an administration building there. I don't know anything about construction, but what I saw last week, Councilor Davis, you're into, they're doing it all over. In small work areas, workspace. And it's amazing to me what I saw them doing in small workspace last week. And if they could do it in Nashville, Tennessee, they can do it in Columbus, Georgia. So that's what I saw last week. So I think if we allow someone to look at it who knows what they're talking about, not me, they could probably tell us how it could be done. And I'm saying to you, the non-judicial administrative people in the government center, we could likely absorb them, be tight, in a small, in some existing buildings, like the annex or this building, and perhaps use commercial office space somewhere else for the non-judicial and for non-judicial functions. For all of those judicial and judicial support functions would go into the new building, and you'd only be moving the IT out when you demo the government center. And of course you'd be, pardon?
You and the mayor.
And yeah, and so, but anyway, Mayor, I don't know.
Counselor Dave, who did I turn on? Alan. I'm losing sight.
Remember me?
I do, vaguely.
I wanted to ask a question. If we look at rehabbing the government center, what will we need to do first on that building? Now I asked that question because I was talking with somebody who works there now, who is very knowledgeable, and they were saying that the elevators that we have are not functional for a rehab project, and that we would probably have to add elevators on the outside.
I agree.
In order to, now I don't know, I'm assuming you're going to come back with that cost based on Councilor House's request, but am I thinking right?
You are, absolutely.
Okay, would that be one on each side, or one on all four sides, or?
I'd have to ask someone, but I don't know where they would go, but you would need additional elevators, and you would need the huge cranes to be able to get stuff off the top, tear the top.
Yeah, I mean, it's.
And people obviously could not work in there while you're renovating. So then you've got to find somewhere
So
for
you've got,
the courts to go.
one of Pam's points was a relocation of
That's
the
right.
workers, so you got a cost there.
That's right.
And we don't know what that
That's
amount
right.
is. Yeah, we could absorb them to some degree.
Well, notice what
but-
I presented would be, you would only be absorbing the non-judicial related functions.
That was my next point.
Yeah.
Then you've got to find a place for the judiciary to meet.
That's right.
To hold court.
That's right.
I don't think everybody needs a court every day, but all judges need a court every day, but
Right.
you got to have a facility for them to be able to operate in, and that's where we run into
That's right.
logistical nightmares. And then on top of that, wherever you locate the judiciary, you got to transport the inmates.
Yeah.
And
Gotta
then
have
you run into
security.
another
That's right.
logistical issue, and it begins to spiral out of control at some point, at least in my layman's mind.
Yeah, and I concur.
But I agree with you, the technology with demolition has far advanced, and it's a science now,
Oh,
really.
goodness, yes.
It's amazing what they can do.
Well, and it may be possible to do some preliminary studies on the renovation and find out the feasibility, simply because of the current structure, the functional obsolescence, and then if in fact it's determined by the council that and the experts that it's worth going farther, then you can spend the money to try to get a more finite cost to be able to do that.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor.
Yes, sir. Councilor Thomas?
There's, as I'm listening to this, there's so many questions. Councilor Allen, I don't have any idea if you can put those elevators on the outside of that building or not. I do know that when you go into that building, the first frustration I have is with the elevators, because they are slow, they are all of those other kinds of things. One of the things, having worked in that building for 3.5 years, I'm concerned about the safety of some of our employees in that building. If we were to have a fire in that building, there's not a single stairwell that opens to the outside of that building. You can't get out of that building without going through some other part of the building. How much is that going to cost us if we're going to renovate? I really think that we don't have any idea, for example, how many square feet do we need for the judicial business? One of the emails that I got was from the public defender, and he said, don't put the public defender's office in the same building with the courtrooms and the judges, because the public defenders and their clients need to be separate from the people who are doing the adjudicating. They need to be able to come to see the public defender without having to go by the judge's office. I don't know. I'm not a judge. I don't know that. I'm not a lawyer. But those kinds of things, we've got to have that information before we can make any of these decisions. And I don't want us, quite frankly, to tie our hands with, we're going to have 2 buildings, or we're going to have 3 buildings, or we're going to have 14 buildings. We don't know that yet until we do some real in-depth study of what we need. And we've not done that. And I'm sort of with Councilor Allen. I think I don't know the answer to the elevator question. The city manager has said he doesn't know the answer to the elevator question, but there's someone who does. And we ought to be asking them, what is the answer to the elevator question? And all of these other questions. So I would want us to do at least some of those preliminary studies before we get so locked into, this is what we're going to do.
Thank you. Councilor Davis?
I would agree, and the more and more I just kind of think through this thing, I keep asking myself, why wouldn't we just start in the sheriff's office? I mean, really, think about it. Who has the most understanding of that building out of anybody in this government? Who runs that building? Who schedules the courts? Who gets people in and out of that? The security needs, the whole complexity of that matter in itself from an operational standpoint. I think if we don't engage them right away, we're missing the picture here. But, Mr. City Manager, to your point, you're right. They can do amazing things in big cities, but the difference is that in those cities you're seeing, they're new businesses. They buy the land, they tear it down, they build new businesses, and then they bring people in. And most of the time, they're money-making businesses or they're operational business. We're running a government, and when we don't have the ability, we're not a new business, we're not a new building going up, so to speak. We've got an operation to maintain and to keep going. And you miss a step. I mean, we just heard from the judges about missing steps and the security issues and all the problems there with just a leak. So, even if you look at the site that's currently there, you would have to take all that stuff out. You'd have to take the wings out. You'd have to take that whole parking deck and dig down and pull all that stuff out. I don't know where you would cut it off with the existing tower on something like that. I don't know where it would cut, but I imagine there's going to be some disruption of utilities and things like that. And then you're going to probably find some suitable soil issues and going to have to start dealing with piers and things of that nature and backfilling and then come up with the elevations where you're going to marry it up to the main tower. But meanwhile, where does everybody park? How do you get prisoners in? How do you keep the courts going and moving and all that kind of stuff? Those are the complex issues that I don't think people are, the citizens don't think through and walk through. We're not moving a business from Atlanta to Columbus where we can do that. We got to keep one going somewhere, and I just don't know. If somebody, I don't know of a building in Uptown that can house the government operations. I really don't. I don't know how you'd move them all, because you just can't move one court or one judge.
And that's why I think they've got to stay in that building until a new one is constructed.
Yeah, one department. What about IT? What about all how this government operates through technology and all? I mean, there's a lot of things here. I just call that the disruption matter.
So, Mr. Mayor, let us take in all of what we've heard today.
Councilor House says something he wants to add.
I was just going to add, to reiterate, I mean, the reason I brought up the renovation is because we keep getting questions, and if we never look at it, we don't know it. And I think the cost will be astronomical. I really do, because of the disruption factor, as well as just what it's going to take to fix it. Because, I mean, I went to the 12th floor and the basement the other day, and there's some challenges with what all's there. And trying to fix it is not going to be easy. And I just think we need to have some idea of what that's going to be. But I think, the existing site or someplace else, I mean, absolutely we need to look at that.
So.
All right, thank you. Did you have something else? Councilor Davis.
Do you know if we've done call it a seismic study or any kind of studies on the current concrete within that building? I know that building's over 50 years old.
Yeah, it was 70.
Has anybody done any studies on any of that kind of stuff?
I don't think so. I don't know of anything that we've done, no.
Okay. Well, there may be an answer hidden in all that.
Yeah. So, Mr. Mayor, we've heard a lot today. And I was just going to say, we are going to be coming back every meeting because we've got a timeline that we established, and we got to figure out how to get back in that timeline, that we stay on track to do what we know we've got to do for November of 2020.
And I think there's a lot of great ideas that are going around here, and to Councilor Thomas's point, it really is not going to be possible to definitely identify even two, because some of the most critical pieces are space and cost. And but I do think if we don't start making the macro decisions as we slowly try to get closer, we're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
We're going to look up, and it's going to be November, and we're going to still be talking about, well, I don't know about two, maybe two if we do. So I think what I would envision happening, everybody's got an opinion. My opinions are less about where the buildings are and how they're configured than the process. I think it's kind of like bull in a ring. We just, if there's, somebody's got an idea and there's one on the table, let them go up against each other. Let council vote whichever one they like best, it moves on. The other one doesn't go away, it just kind of gets parking lotted for a little while. But I think that's, something like that has got to happen to let us continue to work towards an end. Counselor House?
You want a motion?
I can't wait to see what it is.
No, the motion is that, no, we go ahead and start right now and look at option 2.
I like that.
And we reserve, all the discussions about
I like
everything
that
else
motion.
later. Let's start.
So there's a motion and a second to go ahead and identify option 2 as one we want to further flesh out. No, just option 2, right?
For the moment.
For the moment. There's really, well, something else would ideally join it at another point. So is, all those, any discussion, no, let's don't do that. How about just, all those in favor of option 2 to be further evaluated, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, good. Says progress. Good job.
It's progress, yes. Thank you.
It really, listen, no. And we're making light of it, but it really is a big deal. It's a tough decision for this council, and they're going to do a very good job, but it's going to be a painstaking process. So, thank you.
And we'll be back the next meeting to further discuss. That concludes my agenda.
I have one thing I'd like to ask you to look at. We spoke about Steam Mill Road the other day.
Yes, sir.
And Steam Mill Road, as most of you know, recently had a fatality, and as the city manager and I were talking, that fatality occurred almost in the exact same spot as an earlier one just a couple of years ago.
Right.
And there have been other fatalities along that road. So I'd like you to get the city engineer to kind of do a study, take a look at what's going on with that particular area.
We'll certainly do that, Mayor, and I know that's Councilor Barnes. I think that's your district. That is your district, because I live in, yeah. But, Mr. Mayor, we'll certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. All right, and that's all. We'll go to the clerk's agenda. Madam Clerk?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members of council. For the clerk's agenda, we have one item of information, the finance report of applications processed during the month of July. Then we have items 2 and 4. I want to take those together, Mr. Mayor, because I want to amend them to add today's meeting for
Okay, you said 2 and 4?
2 and 4 to amend them to add today's meeting for Mayor Pro Tem as well as Councilor Huff.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve items 2 and 4, adding today's meeting.
Yes, sir.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
And we can take 3 and 5 together, resolutions excusing.
Motion second to approve 3 and 5. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Okay, passed.
Item number 6 is a letter with regards to the Board of Historic and Architectural Review. Mr. Fred Green is nominating Brian Lutke to serve as a representative to succeed Mamie Pound. He may be confirmed.
Motion second to confirm Mr. Lutke. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? He's approved.
For the Development Authority of Columbus, we received a letter of resignation from Jason Cuvis. May it be received.
Motion to receive with regret and a second. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Council Barnes is nominating Mr. Chris Whiteman for this position, and we will bring that back at the next meeting.
Which? Chris Whiteman. Okay, and there was a motion that the minutes be received. Is there a second? Second. All right, motion second, minutes be received. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? They are approved.
Next, we have board appointments, Mr. Mayor. The Columbus Ironworks Convention and Trade Center Authority, Lauren Chambers is interested in serving another term.
We'll reappoint Ms. Chambers. There's a motion second to confirm Ms. Chambers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? She's confirmed.
We also have Helena Coates and Katanga Wright.
I'll bring you two nominees next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We also have council appointments that are ready to be confirmed. The Downtown Development Authority, Will Barnes. Keep Columbus Beautiful Commission, Dr. Coretta Venable, and Land Bank Authority, Deidre Tilley. If there are no further nominations, we may have a motion to confirm all three.
That's a motion to confirm all three. Motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? They are confirmed.
We have council district seat appointments for the Public Safety Advisory Commission. Byron Hickey is interested in serving another term. This is a District 1 representative. Council Barnes, if you wanted to.
I'll get somebody.
I'm sorry, you'll get someone.
Yeah, I'll get somebody.
Okay, thank you. And Councilor Crabb is renominating Donald Watkins to serve as the District 5 representative.
He can be confirmed.
He may be confirmed.
There's a motion and a second to confirm. Any?
I'm sorry, who made the second, Mr. Mayor?
Councilor House, I thought,
Okay,
either one.
yes.
All those in favor of the confirmation, please say aye. Any opposed? He's confirmed.
And then we also have Mr. Dan Scoggins. This is the District 9 seat. For council appointments, any nominations will be listed for the next meeting. We have the Animal Control Advisory Board, Timothy Butts and Becky Carter. Those two seats are open for nominations. We also have the two seats that are provided by the Veterinary Association, Dr. Renee LaFranc and Dr. Carrie Reddick. Board of Honor.
Anybody want to renominate them?
I'm sorry, those two are from the Veterinary Association. And once we receive their recommendation, we will bring those back.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I thought they were being recommended to be
For the,
Without the Veterinary Association concurrence, right? You can check.
if,
Just bring them back.
if
Just
you'll
bring them
allow
back.
me to
Yeah.
check that, if you want to make the nomination, and then
Yep.
we'll check on it to make sure.
Just to be certain. Thank you.
Board of Honor, Milton Hirsch does not desire reappointment. This is council's appointment.
David E. Brown.
I'm sorry, who?
David E. Brown.
We will bring this back for the next meeting.
Well, I don't know, I'm sure.
For the Downtown Development Authority, we have Mr. Stephen Butler, Billy Blanchard, and Alan Tabor. They are all eligible to serve another term of office.
Somebody wish
And
to
then
nominate?
if a member of council wants to make that nomination, and we will bring this back for the next meeting. We have been in contact with all three to make sure that they're interested in serving.
Looks like.
We also have the seat of Chris Cloninger. Councilor Crabb is nominating Brad Kopich, and we will bring this back for the next meeting. For the Land Bank Authority, Mr. Lance Hemmings. He is interested in serving another term. If a member of council wanted to make that nomination, we will bring this back for confirmation. For the Personnel Review Board, we are presenting a vacant seat. This is an alternate member. It's open for nominations. As well as the Tree Board, the seat of Candace Wayman is open for nominations. Uptown Facade Board, Wayne Bond and Raymond Brown. Councilor Thomas is nominating Mr. Wayne Bond. Does a member of council want to? Thank you, Councilor Allen. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? We stand adjourned.
Hi, I'm Lynn Whitfield, and you're watching CCG TV.
Good evening. We want to welcome you to our July 15th regular scheduled board meeting. Do we have any administrators? Raise your hand. Anyone on the leadership team, assistant principals as well? Thank you for coming out. We also want to recognize Mr. Alan Harkness, director of the library, and Ms. Marianne Rickner, director of the museum. Thank you all for attending. Now we will have our inspiration followed by our Pledge of Allegiance.
Okay, welcome. A traveler through a rugged country asked his guide one night, "How are you able to pick your way over those jagged peaks by treacherous trails without losing your direction?" The guide answered, "I have the near look and the far vision. With the one I see what is directly ahead of me, with the other I guide my course by the stars." May we all use our near look and our far vision in the decisions we make. Thank you.
Thank you. Please stand. Join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
we have two revisions to the agenda, both emails that were sent to the board previously. The first one was that we are going to pull the recommendation for the assistant principal
5.04?
position. Yes, that's 5.04. Received a email asking from the candidate that she wants to rescind her candidacy for right now for personal reasons, so we're going to honor and respect that. And then we have an addition that Mr. Ellington will tell us about.
We added today section or action agenda item 5.08, which is the Title IX settlement agreement for your consideration tonight.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
There's a motion and second. All in favor? Are there any questions? All in favor, we'll take a hand vote or electronic hand vote. Take a hand vote. All in favor, please raise your hand. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. First, before we get started, we do have a special announcement from our Director of Information Services. The July 15, 2019 board meeting will not be streamed live on our Muskogee County School District official YouTube channel. As of July 10th, Google Services changed the policies and procedures for all brand accounts whose primary owner is a G Suite for Education K-12 school or district user. This affects other K-12 districts who use Google YouTube services as well. Our Division of Information Services is working with Google to resolve this issue. In the meantime, as customary, tonight's board meeting is being recorded for replay on the Columbus Consolidated Government channel and will be uploaded to our official YouTube board channel once this issue is resolved. If you have any questions, you'll have to. DIS. There is no further information. There is an application or something. It's probably just some restructuring is what it sounds like to me with the notification, some restructuring from Google. They're probably getting ready to, I don't know if it's going to be fee-based or if they're going to properly categorize educational institutions. I don't know. We don't know. So, sudden last-minute thing, just making the announcement so for people who watch it live stream won't have access to that tonight. Need a motion to excuse Dr. Sly. He's on vacation. Are there any questions? Hand vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We've already recognized the visitors. We have a system-wide recognition.
Good evening. This is my first time, so bear with me. I will be taking Mercedes' place. She's out right now, but we do have one recognition, and I'm not sure if Olivia Cochran is here. She is a rising senior at Carver High School, and she was a part of the USA women's basketball team, which won the FIBA World Cup 2019 held in Mongolia. She is a 3x3 fast-paced, it's incredible. I wish she was here. The first team to 21 points. She led the team at the end of regulation, and she was declared the winner. The game was officially unveiled at the 2010 Youth Olympic Games and has held annually since 2011. USA Olympic gold medalist Carol Lawson served as advisor to the team of 4. So congratulations, Olivia Cochran. Well done.
Thank you. That is a pretty big deal. Congratulations. Up next, we have our public agenda. We have 2 speakers signed up tonight, Ms. Teresa Elamine and Mr. Derek Walker. Ms. Teresa Elamine, if you would approach. Citizens are encouraged to address items on the board agenda or to initiate presentations of issues appropriate to school board consideration. The board meeting is not the appropriate place to review individual employee performance or individual parent complaints that have not been addressed by the principal or superintendent. Citizens are encouraged to follow normal channels to address such problems, and each speaker will have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On a personal note, I spent 7 hours in the Jack Houston Memorial Hospital Emergency Department last night. I pushed through a number of health problems, and sometimes I miscalculate how long it takes me to push through. So I'm sorry I was late last week, and I missed speaking on the public agenda. But Ms. Chambers, I think this should be enough for everyone. If you could pass those down. I wear a medical alert with GPS. They did a lot of testing on me at the hospital last night, and they referred me to a cardiologist. I've never had any heart problems. Don't think I do now, so I'm not going to own that. What you have before you is the latest update on the SPICE program. And what I would like to do is recognize Kristen Cooley. Kristen, would you please stand? Kristen Cooley is a SPICE coordinator. Her job that she wants, she told me, is an RBT. What did you say that is? It's a registered behavior. Oh yeah, with Muskogee County School District. She trained the 6 teachers who are going to be teaching the SPICE class. You can read the update in the brochure at your leisure, but there are 2 other things I want to talk about. When I was here last week, I was very concerned about what went on with the Flournoy Calhoun deal. I thought it was going to be on the agenda tonight. But I have heard lots of stories about Flournoy Calhoun in the community. So I went by their office today, and I spoke directly with Mr. Calhoun about the accusations about them being not so hot on dealing with renters. He said it was not a good characterization. I went over to the rental side, and the person over there said that they manage the properties of people. Yeah, this is totally appropriate because you spent over an hour talking with them last week about TAD number 7. TAD number 7. I asked Mr. Jones, who also spoke here last week, about explaining it when I saw him at the council meeting. Mr. Jones said he'd be willing to come out to the community to explain, because poverty in this town means that your students at J.D. Davis, Martin Luther King Jr., Thomas Brewer, Dorothy Height, The majority of them are failing. They're on the south side. The TAD, I don't know that it has anything